Hey, Stephanie, are you all ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, we'll call the September 1st, 2020 Santa Rosa City Council meeting to order. Madam City Clerk, could you please take a roll call?
Councilmember Dowd.
Here.
Councilmember Tibbetts.
Here.
Councilmember Sawyer.
Here.
Councilmember Rogers.
Here.
Councilmember Oliveras.
Here.
Vice Mayor Fleming.
Here.
Mayor Schwedhelm.
Here.
Let the record show that all council members are present.
Okay, a little housekeeping that we're getting used to now, reminding council members to keep your audio on mute unless you're speaking. Staff will remain muted until needing to speak. As members of the public join the meeting, you'll be participating as an attendee. Your microphone and camera will be muted. Only today's panelists will be viewed during the meeting. If you're calling in from a telephone and choose to speak during the public comments portion of today's agenda, for privacy concerns, the host will be renaming your viewable phone number to resident in the last 4 digits of your phone number. Additionally, the City of Santa Rosa is committed to creating a safe and inclusive environment free from disruption, will not tolerate any hateful speech or actions, and are well-staffed to monitor that everyone is participating respectfully, or they will be removed. If necessary, we'll also immediately end the meeting. Madam City Clerk, could you please explain how we'll be handling public comments during today's meeting?
Thank you, Mayor. After each agenda item is presented, the mayor will ask council for council comments and then open it up for public comment. The host in Zoom will be lowering all hands until public comment is open for the agenda item. Once the mayor has called for public comment, the mayor will announce for the public to raise their hand if they wish to speak on the specific agenda item. If you are calling in to listen to the meeting audibly, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. The host will then call on the public who have raised their hands. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes and a timer will appear on the screen for the council and the public to see. Once all live public comments have been heard, the meeting host will play voicemail public comments. If you provide a live public comment on an agenda item, but also submitted an email, e-comment, or recorded a voice message public comment, your email, e-comment, or voice message public comment will not be duplicated, read, or played during the meeting. Additionally, there are 2 public comment periods on today's agenda to speak on non-agenda items. They're items 12 and 16. This is the time when any person may address the council on matters not listed on this agenda, but which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Item 12, non-agenda matters, public comment period will begin no earlier than 5 p.m. and is limited to 10 speakers selected via the Zoom hand-raising feature. Each comment period is limited to 3 minutes. Item 16 is the second and final public comment period on non-agenda matters. Each public comment is limited to 3 minutes. If you have spoken under item 13 non-agenda matters, you will not be permitted to speak at item 16. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. We had no closed session items today, nor did we have a study session. Proclamation presentations, item 5.1. Mr. McGlynn, you want to introduce it?
Sorry about that. Yes, proceed, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry about that. Okay, Mr. Tibbetts, you have this proclamation?
I apologize, Mayor. I did not get an email saying that I should be reading this proclamation. Could you tell me where to locate it? I'd be more than happy to read it.
Sure, it's the attachment on the agenda, 5.1 on Legislar.
Yeah, I got it. Here we go. Got it. Whereas the City of Santa Rosa is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting Santa Rosa. And whereas National Preparedness Month is recognized each September to promote family and community disaster planning now and throughout the year. And as our nation continues to respond to COVID-19, there's no better time to be involved this September. And whereas these events remind us that emergencies can strike anywhere at any time, and being prepared before disaster strikes can be a life or death matter. And whereas when the individuals take responsibility for preparing their families and their communities, the chance of survival and return to normalcy following a disaster is greatly increased. And whereas the Santa Rosa residents should be prepared in their homes, businesses, and communities for any type of emergency, including natural disasters. And whereas residents of Santa Rosa should talk to friends and family about how they will communicate before, during, and after a disaster. And whereas the 2020 National Preparedness Month theme, Disasters Don't Wait, Make Your Plan Today, works to better educate the public on the importance of preparing for disasters by having a plan, building an emergency kit, and teaching youth about preparedness. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Mayor Tom Schwadhelm, Mayor of the City of Santa Rosa, on behalf of the entire City Council, urge all residents of Santa Rosa to take the necessary steps in preparing for any emergency and to support the many public safety activities and efforts of Santa Rosa's Fire and Emergencies Services during the 2020 National Preparedness Month, and do hereby proclaim September as National Preparedness Month.
Thank you for that, Mr. Tibbetts. Looks like we may have to be moving that maybe into August for next year. Council, are there any questions on that proclamation? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
There was no public comment submitted for this item.
All right, thank you for that. Moving on to staff briefings. Mr. McGlynn, do you have any reports for us?
Yes, there's one report tonight. It's item 6.1. It's the status of the state and local eviction protections, and I will be turning it over to City Attorney Sue Gallagher to present.
Good afternoon, Mayor Schwadhelm and council members. I'm going to provide a brief update on the status of eviction protection measures, both at the state level and at the county level. We've previously provided you with a summary a couple of months ago outlining state and local protections, and there have been some changes since that time. As you may recall, back in April of 2020, the California Judicial Council, that's the rulemaking body for the California state courts, adopted a rule that placed a moratorium on all eviction proceedings except as necessary to protect public health and safety. Judicial Council also placed significant restrictions on foreclosure proceedings. Those protections, both for evictions and for foreclosures, were set to remain in place until 90 days after the state declaration of emergency was lifted. On August 13th, 2020, so just a couple of weeks ago, the Judicial Council did reverse course, and they voted to terminate those protections effective today, September 1st. The Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court explained that the remedies sought for all of the affected parties on unlawful detainer actions and judicial foreclosures are best left to the legislative and executive branches of government for open and transparent opportunities to be heard and for permanent measures and permanent solutions. So as of today, those Judicial Council moratoriums are lifted, but the California legislature, working with the governor, has stepped in. And late last night, both houses of the legislature passed AB 3088, and the governor signed the bill into law. So AB 3088 provides protections against residential evictions arising from a tenant's failure to pay rent due to financial hardship caused by the COVID pandemic. So it is specific to failure to pay rent due to COVID financial impacts of the COVID pandemic. The bill sets forth three phases. The first, it places a moratorium on eviction proceedings based on non-payment of rent for any reason until October 5th. So basically a month, puts everything on pause for a month related to evictions for non-payment of rent. And that's specifically to give time for the courts, the judicial council, landlords, and tenants to prepare for the new rules. Starting October 5th, residential evictions for non-payment of rent can resume, but the bill places specific protections against eviction for those whose failure to pay rent was a result of financial distress due to COVID-19 pandemic. And financial distress, similar to previous standards, includes a loss of income due to the pandemic, increased out-of-pocket expenses, increased expenses specifically related to the health impacts of COVID-19, or income loss or added expenses due to childcare responsibilities or responsibilities for caring for an elderly, disabled, or sick family member related to the COVID pandemic. So very similar standards of what we're looking at in terms of the basis for protections. But to be eligible for protections under AB 3088, the tenant must, within 15 days after receiving a notice of eviction, must provide to the landlord a declaration under penalty of perjury that the failure to pay rent was due to COVID-related financial distress. Once that declaration is provided, then the protections that are given by the bill depend on when the unpaid rent accrued. It's a little bit more complicated. I will also note that that declaration alone, in most cases, will suffice. But if you are a higher income a tenant, that is a tenant that earns more than 130% of the average county income, the landlord may require that you show additional documentation. But in general, if you provide the declaration under penalty of perjury, then we look at when did your unpaid rent accrue. If the unpaid rent accrued during the first 6 months of the pandemic in California, so from March 1st to August 31st, then all of the unpaid rent and any other payment obligations are automatically converted to consumer debt. And as consumer debt, the unpaid rent cannot be the basis for an eviction. And that's permanent. Takes eviction off the table relative to that period of unpaid rent. But the tenant still owes the rent, and landlords can bring a small claims action to recover that rent. The bill does provide that those small claim actions can't be filed until after March 1st, 2021, and the bill expressly expands the coverage of small claims courts to account for those types of actions. In general, small claims court is limited to claims of $10,000 or less. This allows the small claims court to consider any action for recovery of unpaid rents. If you're beyond yesterday, August 31st, and you're still unable to pay, starting September 1st and extending to January 31st, so today and for the coming 5 months, if you are unable to pay, you submit your declaration. There are two possibilities. If you're able by January 31st to pay 25% of the rent that's due during that period, then the remaining 75% of the rent will be also converted to consumer debt, also will not be a basis for eviction, also can be collected in a small claims action. If you're not able to pay the 25% of the rent due, then you are subject to eviction, but the eviction proceedings cannot be filed until next February 1st, 2021. So evictions suspended for that period of time. Couple of notes that I'll make. The bill does extend from the time to respond to an unlawful detainer action, which from 3 business days to 15 business days. So you have that 15 business days to submit your declaration stating that your failure to pay was due to COVID. Eviction for just causes other than non-payment of rent are not affected, and they can move forward starting tomorrow. The bill does prohibit the landlord from retaliating against a tenant for having unpaid rent due to COVID, so protections that way. And the protections of 3088, then for after January 31st, 2021, there are no further protections under this bill. Another significant part of 3088 is it does allow, specifically expressly allows local ordinances related to COVID-19 renter protections to continue to remain in place as long as they were adopted on or before August 19th, 2020. So the County of Sonoma's current ordinance meets that criteria, and it will remain in effect. The bill, though, provides that any amendments to any such ordinance or any new ordinances concerning COVID-related evictions, any new ordinances amendments adopted between August 19th, again, these had to be in place on August 19th. Anything new after August 19th through January 31st has no effect until February 1st, 2021. It also provides that if a local ordinance provides a payback period for unpaid rent, it places some limitations on that. Sonoma County's ordinance does provide a repayment period. It was to start 60 days after termination of the public health emergency. That's what the county provides. The new state law says that you will deem that to the payment period to begin on March 1st, 2021, and it must be completed by March 31st, 2022, so a year and a month. Or if the 60 days runs before, it's whichever is earlier. So it gets a little bit complicated there. But again, the repayment period would begin on March 1st, 2021, and would extend for a year unless the public health emergency is lifted prior to that time. So that's the main features of 3088. There are a lot of little nuances, but again, that's the big picture. So the county ordinance remains in place. The county had originally was scheduled to revisit the ordinance last month due to other pending matters that got continued. The expectation is that the ordinance will be reviewed, is being scheduled for review on September 15th. I don't know if that will change in light of the passage of 3088. But as it stands now, it is in place, and it remains in place under the new state law. So as you may recall, it also provides protections for residential tenants who demonstrate that their failure to pay rent results from a substantial loss of income or a substantial out-of-pocket medical expense associated with COVID-19 or associated with any local, state, or federal response to the pandemic. The tenant must demonstrate the substantial loss of income or out-of-pocket medical expense through documentation and other objectively verifiable means, must share the documentation with the property owner. The ordinance says for the sole and limited purpose of supporting the owner's claim for mortgage relief. Again, the ordinance itself does not provide for mortgage relief, but it does provide that you have to share that documentation. The ordinance prohibits landlords from terminating a tenancy for failure to pay rent if the tenant demonstrates that it's a result of COVID-19. The ordinance creates an affirmative defense, which the tenant can plead in, can be asserted in the tenant's answer to the unlawful detainer, and also can be raised at trial. And it creates again, this is the county ordinance, creates a private right of action for any violation of the ordinance by a landlord. The aggrieved tenant can file a civil action for injunctive relief and money damages. Money damages are, quote, not less than 3 times actual damages. Excuse me. And those damages can include damages for mental or emotional distress, although those damages won't be trebled. Like the state law, the county ordinance does not relieve the tenant of the obligation to pay rent. And again, it provides that payback period of 60 days. Excuse me. The other thing that I'll note on the county side is that today the county did consider an emergency rental assistance program. I was not able to watch the board meeting, so I don't know the results. But excuse me, the proposal was for $1.5 million to be pulled from CARE funds and from CDBG funds. It was to cover rent and utility bills. They anticipated being able to assist 350 households with up to $6,000 each. It also included provisions for legal aid eviction defense. So again, I don't know the results of that. I was not able to watch the board meeting. And that's my summary. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you for that thorough summary. And Madam City Attorney, is there a location where community members could find out more details about all that information you just shared?
There are summaries on the legislature's website. We can certainly post some summaries on the city's website as well. And I'm happy to work with Adrian Mertensar to get that up and running.
I think that would be great. Thank you.
Great.
All right, Council, questions, Mr. Tibbetts.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Sue. So my questions are really just trying to touch on the major points of AB 3038, I think it was. So what I heard was that 25% of the rent will be due and 75% becomes consumer debt. Did I hear that correctly? And if they don't pay the 25%, they can be evicted for failure to pay.
So again, 2 different time frames. So if the accrued rent was between March 1st and August 31st, up through yesterday, for that time period, if you sign the declaration, submit the declaration and any additional documentation requested, all of that unpaid rent is converted to consumer debt. And again, can be collected in small claims, but not until next February, end of next February. If the accrued rent was from today through January 31st, as long as you provide your declaration and your documentation, 2 possibilities. If you are able to pay the 25%, then the remainder, at least 25%, any remainder becomes consumer debt, cannot be used for eviction, and can be collected in small claims again next winter. If you're not able to pay, the 25%, then you can be subject to eviction based on unpaid rent. But those eviction proceedings can't begin again until next winter.
Okay, and then I think I heard you say that if somebody who was from that March 1st to August 31st time period, if they want to, I guess, avail themselves of these protections, they need to provide a written declaration under penalty of perjury that they were impacted by COVID-19 to their landlord. And so they have about 34 days to do this.
They provide that upon receipt of a notice of eviction. So they do not affirmatively need to step forward and provide that declaration. Okay. But once they get a notice of eviction, then they would need to provide that. Certainly, there's nothing that would prevent them from providing that in advance, but it is required in response to the filing of the receipt of an eviction notice.
So if they get their notice of eviction or their notice to pay or quit by October 10th, they have a certain amount of time to furnish that declaration?
Correct. So if they receive their notice on October 10th, they would have 15 business days after that date to provide the declaration.
Okay, super. Just one quick comment, and I'll look to my colleagues, but I really think that in the next water bill mailing that we do, we provide really clear instructions and information about these protections to make sure that people, I mean, we're doing the best job we can as a city to make sure that people know what they can do. So I'd like to see that. The other thing is in reference to the rental assistance fund that the county has done. I assume that's going to be available to residents of the city of Santa Rosa in addition to the unincorporated county? Or are they drawing boundaries?
I don't know the answer to that.
We're happy, council member, to bring back the results of what the action was today at the next update on the 15th. So we'd be pleased to bring that back to provide clarity on the program and the scope and scale.
Yeah, I for one would really appreciate that. I just want to make sure that residents of Santa Rosa have some access to this program. If they don't, I'd like to look to the Economic Development Subcommittee, my colleagues, Victoria and John, to better understand if anything happened at all with my request to look at a rental assistance fund in the form of a loan program here at the city, because I think it is going to be important that folks who need help with that 25% have access to it. I don't care whether it's us or the county, but it's just got to happen. So thank you, guys.
And if I may, I also want to clarify because council member, you were asking in terms of the dates. I do want to clarify that this period, this second phase, the second period from today through the end of January, the declaration has to be submitted within 15 days of a notice of eviction, but the 25% payment of rent does not have to be made at that time. It can be made until January 31st.
I think Mr. Sawyer, you have a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, makes me concerned about the legislature working late into the night. It sounds that they came up with quite a brain teaser on this one. I'm glad that we're going to have some a hotline, if you will, of some kind of some assistance. I do have a lot of, I feel sorry for the tenants and the landlords trying to figure out where to go on this one. It's going to be it's any summary that takes 20 minutes to explain is got to be a pretty complicated piece of legislation. So I thank you, Madam City Attorney, for that great summary. I am curious about the declaration. Could you give me an example? Let's say a tenant had their hours cut at their job and could no longer pay their rent. Could you give me a sense of what that declaration may sound like in what they would have to provide to the landlord, so that I get a sense of how far does the tenant have to go beyond just saying, I can't afford it? And that's my declaration. So what might a declaration look like? And that's the only question I'm going to ask, because otherwise I'll be here all night asking questions. And I'm stumped by this entire piece of legislation. They really did get creative. I've got to give them that. But what would that declaration look like?
I'm looking at the bill. My recollection is there is a suggested form for that that does not look terribly complicated. And again, only those who are considered high income tenants who would have to provide additional documentation. But certainly we can provide that to you, a sample, and then I can pull out whatever forms are available for you and for council, and we can certainly have those linked on the website as well. I also want to mention that that there are a number of summaries that have been prepared, and indeed representative from the California Apartment Association did send me their summary, which does small print, but it is all contained on one page. And so, you know, that those kinds of summaries can be very helpful as well.
Well, people will definitely need them. And it's not that I don't have care and concern for the tenants and the landlords. I think the legislature is doing their best to try to come up with some solutions. Unfortunately, I think one of the solutions that landlords have is to sell their rental property, and I think that could be within the next year the choice taken by landlords that are simply unwilling or unable to respond to this legislation. So I'll be curious to see what the fallout is. I hope it's not too damaging. But I think that is one of the issues that we will be faced with is a reduction, which has been proven over and over again, that this kind of legislation does nothing but the opposite effect of what they're hoping for. So maybe we'll be lucky and we won't lose a lot of rental housing because of these requirements. And the landlords, many of which are the small mom and pop landlords, whether they can actually deal with this kind of legislation. So the time will tell. I'll keep my fingers crossed. Thank you.
All right, council, any additional questions on this item? Seeing none, Mr. McGlynn, do you have any other reports on item 6?
Nothing else this evening.
Okay. We'll now take public comments on item 6.1, the status of state and local eviction protections. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Madam Zoom host, would you facilitate any public comment on this item, please?
Madam Zoom host.
Thank you, Mayor. Will do. Please note that there is a timer on the screen before you for those participating with a visual via Zoom. For those participating via telephone who wish to make a comment, as the Mayor stated, please dial *9 to raise your hand. At the end of the countdown, at the conclusion of your comment, the timer will sound if you cannot see the clock on your screen. All right, Mayor, I'm seeing no hands raised for public comment on item 6, staff briefings. And there were no email, no voice message, no e-comment, public comments submitted on this item.
Okay, thank you very much. City Manager, City Attorney report. Madam City Attorney, would you like to start this time?
I'm happy to start, and I have nothing to report this afternoon.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, anything to report to us this evening?
Yes, I'd like to take a moment and thank Assistant City Manager David Guin for his tremendous service that he's provided to the city over the last 17 years. He's been a champion for the city. He's been working with various teams from the water utility to the newly created portfolio of community development and engagement. And he's really been an asset, and we're going to wish him really the best in his new position. I'd also like to take the opportunity to profile one of his team who's stepped into the leadership position, and that's Claire Hartman. She's been working for the city for 21 years. She's done fabulous work in the planning and economic development, and I know she's going to continue to be a champion of the culture in that part of the organization and their ability to be creative, innovative, and get to yes. So thank you to both for your service, and thank you to Claire for stepping up, and can't wait to get to start to work with her on that level. And that's my report.
Thank you for that, Council. Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Mr. Tibbetts.
Thanks. Sorry, it takes me a good few seconds to find the raise hand button. I just wanted to also thank and wish David the best. You know, I was on the Board of Public Utilities when he was the director of the water department, and it was always an inspiration to watch that guy work. And yes, I agree completely with Sean. You know, he really helped us find ways to get to yes, and I look forward to working with Claire. And I hope that we can continue that attitude and culture in the city. And when it comes to Claire, I have no doubt that we will. But I think we owe David a tremendous debt of gratitude on all the efficiencies in the planning department that have happened over the last few years. And when I read in the paper that he was moving on, I was quite sad, but I know that he's going to go pull weight wherever he goes. So wishing him all the best.
Thank you. Mr. Sawyer.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I agree with Jack, and it is a great loss to the city to have David go, but we also will be in great hands with Claire. She knows her business, and she has the same kind of dedication that David has. And it is my hope that our organization and the council carry his spirit for the downtown and for the rest of the city of Santa Rosa, and the work that he has done to create a department that is both predictable, consistent, fair, and dedicated not only to the core of our downtown, but to the rest of the city as well. So we had the luxury of his presence for years. And again, I'm just hoping that we can take what he has shown us as far as acting boldly and moving forward and continue his work along with Claire into the future. So thank you, David.
Thank you, Mr. Sawyer. And I would like to echo those comments. I really look forward to working with Claire in her new role. I've had several different opportunities to work with her on a variety of different projects, so I'm sure that will be continuing. And for Mr. Goin, having known him for well over a decade and working with him when I was on staff and his council, he's really added great value not only to my work product, but also to the city as a whole. So Claire's got some large shoes to fill there, but I know she's going to do an excellent job with that. And the nice thing about Mr. Goin, he is still going to be a Santa Rosa resident, so there'll be some opportunity for boards and commissions and other involvement with his the place he calls home, which is Santa Rosa. It is kind of awkward not seeing either Claire or David here. Usually we do this in person. So, Mr. Dowd, did you have your hand up? Would you like to make some comments?
I'll be brief, but I am of the same opinion that my colleagues have stated, and I have sent an email of congratulations to David Guin that he found an opportunity and that we were going to miss him very much at the city. And I also sent an email to Claire that we are happy to welcome her as interim director. And I know we'll be happy with the performance in her work. So I concur.
Thank you for that. Okay, not seeing any additional hands. We're now taking public comment on item 7, the city manager, city attorney reports. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Madam Zoom host, would you facilitate any public comment for this item, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Getting there. Hang on just a moment. Today's quirky Zoom day, evidently. Okay, now, again, like the mayor said, this is the opportunity for public comment on item 7, the city manager's city attorney report. If you wish to make a comment in Zoom, raise your hand or dial *9 from a telephone. Mayor, there are no hands being raised for item 7, city manager, city attorney report, and there were no public comments submitted via email, voice message, or e-comment.
Great, thank you for that. All right, item 8, statements of abstention by council members. Are there any on tonight's agenda? Seeing none. On to item 9, mayors and council members reports. Who has a report that they would like to report out on tonight? Madam Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to give a brief update. We had a meeting of the Renewal Enterprise District last week, and I believe we're getting closer to the county being interested in funding the Renewal Enterprise District, and also hopefully at some point we'll get additional funding from other sources. And I just wanted to share how exciting this news is. Also, we had just celebrated 1 year of having an executive director, and I'm proud to say that we are viable, independent, and moving towards getting housing built and doing what we call economic gardening and the Urban 3 principles and implementing them through this. So if anybody has any questions about this and wants to talk with me offline, I'd be happy to talk with them longer than I'm sure anybody wants to talk about it right now. But it is a really, really a great thing to see come to fruition. So can't wait to get those shovels in the ground. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. And the only thing I'd like to report on is that earlier today, Councilmember Rogers and I participated in the goal setting ad hoc. So we had a meeting with several different staff members, and we're not ready yet to report out to council, but we'll be having our second and hopefully final meeting on September 9th. So more to follow, I would anticipate by our September 15th council meeting. All right, on to item 10, approval of minutes. Did anyone have any corrections or adjustments to the April 28th regular council meeting minutes? Seeing none, we will take those as submitted. Item 11, consent items. Mr. City Manager.
Yes. Item 11.1, motion, approval of the 2020 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant application. Item 11.2, resolution, amendment to the city's classification and salary plan establishing the classification of the chief financial officer and reclassification of the vacant assistant city manager chief financial officer position to chief financial officer. 11.3, resolution, authorization of matching grant application for Federal Transit Administration Section 5307 funds under Lifeline Support Program Cycle 6. Item 11.4, resolution, speed limits on Hopper Avenue, Parsons Drive, and Sebastopol Road. Item 11.5, resolution, approval of the blanket purchase order and related participating agreement for office supplies under Sourcewell Cooperative Contract. Item 11.6, Ordinance adoption, second reading. Ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Rosa, pre-zoning the properties located at 311 and 3119 Santa Rosa Avenue into the CG, General Commercial Zoning District, and the properties located at 3110, 3114, and 3122 into the R318 Multifamily Residential Zoning District. File number ANX 19-001, 11.7, Ordinance adoption, second reading. Ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Rosa amending Title 20 of the Santa Rosa City Code, reclassifying, rezoning two properties located at 3991 and 3995 Sebastopol Road to the R-1-6 Single Family Residential Zoning District, file number PRJ 18-018.
Thank you for that. Council, any questions on the consent calendar? Mr. Oliveras.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. City Manager, quick question on 11.2 with the Assistant City Manager, CFO. He also had other responsibilities with other internal departments. Who will be taking over those responsibilities?
Since the departure of Assistant City Manager Chuck McBride, those departments have been reporting to the City Manager, and they will do so moving forward.
Thank you, sir.
Council, any additional questions? Seeing none, we're now taking public comment on item 11, the consent calendar. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Madam City Host, could you please facilitate public comment on item 11?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor stated it is public comment opportunity for item 11, consent calendar. A countdown timer will appear for participants for their convenience. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak. Please be sure to unmute yourself when you are invited to do so. Your microphone will be muted at the end of that countdown or at the conclusion of your comment. All right, Mayor, there are no hands being raised for item 11, consent calendar public comment. Likewise, there were no voice message public comments, no email public comments, and no e-comment public comments received for consent.
Okay, thank you for that. Madam Vice Mayor, you have the consent calendar.
Yes, and you guys made it easy on me today with no abstentions. So I'm going to go ahead and move items 11.1 through 11.7 and await a second.
Second.
I missed, who was the second from? Was that you, Mr. Sawyer?
That'd be Chris.
Rogers.
Rogers, okay. We have a motion by our Vice Mayor, seconded by Councilmember Rogers. Any questions from council? Madam City Clerk, could you please do a roll call vote?
Yes. Councilmember Dowd?
Aye.
Councilmember Tibbetts?
Aye.
Councilmember Sawyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Oliveras?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Fleming?
Aye.
Mayor Schweidhelm?
Aye.
That motion passes with 7 ayes.
All right, thank you. It's not quite 5 o'clock yet, so we will move to item 13, report item 13.1. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, item 13.1, report, extension of Resilient City, RC, combining district. Shari Meads, City Planner, presenting.
Hi there, just got unmuted. Good evening, Mayor Schweidhelm, Vice Mayor Fleming, and members of the council. It is a pleasure to be before you this afternoon. Next slide, please. This item is a zoning code text amendment to extend the Resilient City, also known as the RC Combining District, for a period of 3 years until October 9th, 2023. Next slide, please. The RC Combining District was formed in October 2017 to facilitate and streamline the recovery and rebuilding of those areas of the city that were most impacted by the Tubbs and Nuns wildfires. It has been amended here and there to include additional initiatives as they were deemed necessary. Next slide, please. The RC Combining District initiatives have been very successful at facilitating the rebuild, but the process is not yet complete, which is why we're here tonight. Note that staff is planning to do community outreach in the first few weeks of September to introduce and receive feedback for additional rebuilding and recovery initiatives that will further address citywide wildfire and COVID recovery. And staff tentatively plans to bring those elements to the Planning Commission in October and to this board in November. Next slide, please. This ordinance, however, is targeted to just extending the date of the RC Combining District for 3 years until October 9th, 2023. And what you can see here is the actual code language and how the changes will simply adjust the dates. Next slide, please. And we've determined that this action is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. Next slide, please. It is our recommendation that council introduce this ordinance tonight to extend the RC Combining District for a period of 3 years until October 9th, 2023, with the second reading on September 15th. Next slide, please. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you for that presentation. Council, any questions? Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had just a quick question, elements within the combining district that we recently had, I guess not that recently, but that we had amended was in particular relative to the noise ordinances for the area. And at the time, we talked about how much construction there was that was going on in areas such as Coffee Park specifically, and made the determination that it was in the public's best interest and in the city's overall best interest to be flexible on that. Are we seeing the construction levels in Coffee Park and in Fountain Grove to still have that exemption to the sound, the noise ordinances in place? And how does that dovetail with some of our neighborhoods that are now at this point pretty much completely rebuilt with folks who have reoccupied the homes?
That's a very good question. And Coffee Park is, I don't want to say, primarily rebuilt, but it is. It's significantly been rebuilt. And I can actually tell you the numbers if we're interested in that. But it is a significant impact potentially to allow the noise to continue past the regular construction hours in those neighborhoods that have been rebuilt to such a level as Coffee Park. So that is definitely something we can relook at. This is just extending the time limit, but as I mentioned, we are looking at this ordinance overall and the resilient city development measures overall. So this type of feedback is really important to us moving forward with that particular amendment.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I'm not looking to derail things tonight.
No.
I just do know that there was a significant discussion about the timing of the pouring of the foundation for a lot of these homes, and in certain areas, it might make sense for us to look at the noise ordinances again to see if that's still when and how we see construction proceeding from here on out. But doesn't need to be tonight, but I do think that at a certain point, we can be a little bit more nuanced and take a chisel to this instead of a jackhammer.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And Sherry, I just following up on Mr. Rogers, is my understanding few, if any, contractors took advantage of the early start times for the foundations. Might off the top of your head, if how many might have taken advantage of that?
I don't know a number. I do know that in the hottest parts of last summer, they definitely took advantage of it and the previous year. And it was mainly, related to weather constraints and having, again, this was also partly due to the significant quantity of homes being built at the same time. There were fewer available contractors that could do that type of work. And so they were trying to schedule multiple appointments in the same day. And that required starting much earlier. Again, that may be something that is not as important moving forward.
Great, thank you for that. Council, any additional questions? Seeing none. We're now taking public comment on item 13.1, the extension of the resilient city combining districts. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via phone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. You'll have 3 minutes. Madam Host, would you facilitate any public comment on this item?
Thank you, Mayor. As you can see, a countdown timer has appeared for the convenience of the participants. And for those participating via telephone, if you make a comment and use your entire 3-minute public comment period, you will hear an audio indicator that your time is up and will be muted. To participate, please raise your hand via Zoom, dial *9 on your telephone. Mayor, I do not see any hands being raised for live public comment on item 13.1. Additionally, there were no voice message public comments, nor were there any email and e-comment public comments submitted.
Great, thank you for that. Bring it back to council. Mr. Oliveras, you have this item.
Thank you, Mayor. I introduce ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Rosa, amending Title 20 of the Santa Rosa City Code to extend Section 20-28 100 Resilient Combining District for a period of 3 years until October 9, 2023. File number REZ 20-006, and waive further reading of the text.
Second.
Okay, we had a motion by Mr. Oliveras, seconded by Mr. Sawyer. Any additional comments? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, could you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Councilmember Dowd,
Aye.
Councilmember Tibbetts,
Aye.
Councilmember Sawyer,
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers,
Aye.
Councilmember Oliveras,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Fleming,
Aye.
Mayor Schwedhelm.
Aye.
That motion passes with 7 ayes.
Thank you for that. Seeing still a couple clicks before 5 o'clock, we can't start either. Why don't we take a 5-minute break and we'll reconvene shortly after 5 o'clock. Madam City Clerk, are you ready to resume?
Yes, I am.
Okay, could you please do a roll call?
Yes. Councilmember Dowd,
Here.
Councilmember Tibbetts,
Here.
Councilmember Sawyer,
Here.
Councilmember Rogers,
Here.
Councilmember Oliveras,
Here.
Vice Mayor Fleming,
Here.
Mayor Schwedhelm.
Here.
Let the record show that all council members are present.
Thank you for that. We'll now go back to item 12, public comment on non-agenda matters. So we're now taking public comment on item 12, non-agenda matters. This is the time when any person may address the council on matters not listed on this agenda, but which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. We'll take 10 speakers under this item. If we have more than 10 public comments, the remaining speakers will be afforded the opportunity to speak on item 16, non-agenda matters, to provide public comment. Madam Host, would you facilitate the public comment portion of this item?
Thank you, Mayor. The first public comment will be from Manuel. And Manuel, it looks like you need to update your version of Zoom. You are not able to talk from the attendee side. If you leave the Zoom meeting and update your Zoom app and rejoin the meeting, we'll be happy to call on you to make your public comment at that time. We will be circling back for live public comment under item 16 on the agenda as well. There's no access for me to unmute your microphone. Okay, Mayor, I see no additional hands being raised for this live public comment period on non-agenda matters. Additionally, there were no voice messages, no e-comments, and no email public comments received for non-agenda matters on this agenda.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Item 14.1, Mr. City Manager.
Item 14.1, public hearing, placement of annual stormwater enterprise charges on the Sonoma County property tax roll, manner of collection. Claire Myers, Stormwater and Creeks Manager, presenting.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Schwedhelm and members of the council. I am here today to speak with you about the public hearing on placement of annual stormwater enterprise charges on the Sonoma County property tax roll. The stormwater enterprise was created by council in accordance with Title 16 of the City Code in 1996. The enterprise provides funding for implementation of the city's National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDS, stormwater permit, as well as activities such as creek restoration and stewardship, flood protection, public education, storm drain maintenance, and stormwater quality testing. Next slide. And next slide. The stormwater assessment is calculated based on equivalent residential unit, or ERU. The calculations consider the size of a parcel, the amount of impervious surface, and the land use of each parcel. The current ERU rate is $35.92 per ERU, which was approved by council in June during the 2020 and 2021 budget process. Next slide. In order to simplify the payment process for property owners and minimize collection expenses, it is requested that the enterprise charges be collected on the Sonoma County property tax roll on the city's behalf. The charges have been collected annually on the tax roll since they were established in September of 1996. Next slide. It is in the best interest of the city that those parcels not billed by the county due to the charges not meeting the county's $10 minimum to bill and or parcels with known incorrect ownership contact information shall not be separately billed by the city, as the cost of separately billing exceeds the potential revenue. Any charges not collected will not affect other parcel charges. Next slide. So today's public hearing, in accordance with Title 16 of the City Code, will adopt the Stormwater Enterprise Charge Report, approve placing the charges on the county tax roll for collection, and allow the public the opportunity to protest the method of collecting the charges. And to clarify, this action only considers the manner in which the annual charges will be collected and not the amount of the fee. Next slide. It is recommended by the Water Department that the Council, by resolution, adopt the Stormwater Enterprise Charge Report and approve placement of the Stormwater Enterprise charges on the Sonoma County property tax roll to be collected by the Sonoma County Auditor, Controller, Treasurer, Tax Collector at the same time and in the same manner as Sonoma County property taxes are collected, unless those charges do not meet the county minimum of $10 and or parcel owner contact information is known to be incorrect. Thank you very much, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for that presentation, Claire. Council, any questions? Seeing no questions from council, this is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing. Public hearing on item 14.1, placement of annual stormwater enterprise charges on the Sonoma County property tax roll manner of collection is now open. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. You'll have 3 minutes. Madam City Host, would you facilitate public comment on this item, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, this is the public hearing, item 14.1, annual stormwater enterprise charges. To raise your hand via Zoom, dialing in from a telephone, dial *9. A countdown timer is up on the screen for the convenience of those participating. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak. Please make sure to unmute yourself at the time when you are invited to do so. Mayor, I'm seeing no hands being raised in Zoom for this item. Are you okay if I move along to the voice message public comments?
Absolutely.
Well, there were no voice message public comments, nor were there any email or e-comment public comments received for this item. And I'm seeing no additional hands be raised.
All right, thank you for that. Seeing no comments on this item for the City Council, I've closed this public hearing. Bring it back to council. Any last minute questions on this item? Seeing none, Mr. Dowd, you have this item.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Rosa approving and adopting report for proposal to place stormwater and drainage charges on Sonoma County property tax roll for collection with county property taxes fiscal year 2020-2021, and ordering that city's annual stormwater enterprise charges be collected on the Sonoma County property tax roll unless those charges do not meet the county minimum of $10 and or parcel owner contact information is known to be incorrect, and waive the reading of the remainder of the text.
Second.
Saw a motion by Mr. Dowd, seconded by Mr. Rogers. Any additional questions? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, could you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Councilmember Dowd,
Aye.
Councilmember Tibbetts,
Aye.
Councilmember Sawyer,
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers,
Aye.
Councilmember Oliveris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Fleming,
Aye.
Mayor Schwedhelm.
Aye.
That motion passes with 7 ayes.
Great, thank you. Item 15, written communications. We had the notice on the final map around Barn Village subdivision, just provided for our information. Moving on to item 16, public comment on non-agenda matters. So we're now taking public comment on item 16, non-agenda matters. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. This is the time for public comment by members of the public who were unable to speak on item 12. Madam City Host, would you facilitate item 16, please?
Thank you, Mayor. The first public comment will be from Amy. Amy, I've enabled your speaking permissions. Please unmute your microphone and confirm you can see the timer on the screen.
I can.
Terrific, thank you. Please identify yourself for public record if you so choose, and your time begins now.
Yeah, this is Manny DeLeo. I'm using my wife's thing because I had to figure it out. Okay, so I was calling about all the issues on Sebastopol Road, about all the RVs. When you guys cleaned out Joe Rodata Trail and Corporate Center, a lot of those RVs ended up on Sebastopol Road in the residential communities. And it's also the halfway point between Sam Jones Hall. We've had a lot of issues here with drugs, trash being left out, fires being lit in trash cans, urine and feces being thrown in our drains. And I know I spoke with Julie Combs about it prior, and but there is no zone person who's in charge of it. It's in front of Westview Christian Church in Village Green Park, where children can't even really go there. I've witnessed people shooting up, people having sex in front of my child who's 10, and I have a 5-year-old. I'm a teacher at Santa Rosa High School. I sent over 30 photos. I've probably called the cops over 10 times. There's been altercations between me and one of the individuals that's out there, along with, and he's had 4 other instances where he's started altercations with others, and nothing's happened. There was also an issue that I wanted to bring up as well about a girl that got hit last year on Lewis Cron by a car, and people drive too fast. And I was wondering if there was any way we could put a barrier up, or maybe close the street off, like maybe a court, because there's blind turns. My neighbor runs a daycare, and she's got anywhere from 8 to 10 children that are on the corner. I've watched kids almost get hit every single day around that turn, and nothing. I guess this is the place that I'm supposed to go. We currently have 8 or 9 RVs on Sebastopol Road, and I understand it's a big issue all across the city, but we are the hotbed being between Sam Jones Hall, Joe Rodata Trail, and Corporate Center, because they've all come down that street. I've witnessed drug deals. I've called the cops, but by the time the cops get here, they're gone. Because it doesn't take long to do that. We've had the city came by and dropped off things to pick up trash. I spent an hour and a half picking up garbage in front of my house that the homeless have left out there. And I'm just concerned with what things we can do. And now we have more low-income buildings that are coming all around Sebastopol Road. In the R1 section, I think I heard earlier in this forum. So those are some of my concerns and what is going to be done about zone. I believe we're zone 8. And I'm done.
Thank you, Manny. Mayor, I see no additional hands being raised for public comment on non-agenda matters. And as stated previously under item 12, There were no voice message, email public comments, or e-comment public comments submitted.
Hey, thank you for that. And just in regards to the last public comment, I think all of us received emails regarding that location, and I have communicated with the chief of police. They're aware of it, and Lieutenant Cooker is responsible for that area. So the police department is aware of it and taking hopefully whatever action is necessary. Mr. Rogers, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to ask that maybe somebody from Transportation and Public Works get back to Mr. DeLeo as well to talk about the street issues and what type of changes we could possibly make to try to help with folks speeding along there or unsafe traffic conditions.
Great. Mr. Dowd, you had a comment too?
I happened to take a ride down Sebastopol Road Saturday afternoon, and I went through the corporate center first and then down Sebastopol Road, and without identifying any particular vehicles, the corporate center area is all cleaned up with RVs, and guess what? It looks like they're just down the road on Sebastopol Road. So I would suggest that Mayor Schwedhelm, you and I engage in a conversation at the homeless and a task force that we both sit on, and see if there's anything we can do to accommodate this neighborhood, because it's pretty bad.
All right, thank you for that. I think it will be a topic of conversation at our next scheduled meeting. Any other comments? All righty, having no other items to discuss on today's agenda, this meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you for your participation and attendance.